Good morning and welcome to my first edition, maybe there'll be more, of a Q&A session. I've gotten quite a few comments on a few of the videos that I've made, and yeah, I could sit there and type responses, which I'll probably respond anyway, but it's also nice to have some open dialogue. After all, this is a video platform with textual components, but yeah, I figure it's easier to just make a couple videos and then respond to the messages or the comments that I'm currently seeing. So the first one it was on the video regarding one of the Zenfone videos that I made. And this particular user was saying that in response to the video, and I don't honestly remember everything that I said in there, but I do know that this user has a different perspective. So their comment is, there are still some other options. To me, the most compelling is the S21, which you can find now for $300 or $400. It has wireless charging, USB-C, and will actually outlast the Zenfone 9. It will have a slower processor and slightly worse battery life. The S22 is a no-go for me. Battery isn't big enough. All right. And I'll say that when it comes to battery life on the S22, I could not agree more. All right. Just so you know what I'm attempting to do right now, which is why, even though I'm not a huge fan of these Samsung phones, they are pretty versatile. So prior to recording, I have the Galaxy S22 right there on the stand. The cable that's connected to it is a USB-C to HDMI. So I am able to use this monitor as a monitor for me to see exactly how the camera looks. I think that's in part to DeX and maybe some other stuff. I don't know if it's full-fledged DeX. I mean, what I'm seeing right now on the screen is an entire operating system almost. So it is pretty nice. But I had loaded a Chrome tab prior to recording, and it looks like after I started recording, or once I started recording, the Chrome tab closed, and all I had up was GSM Arena's website with regards to the S22 and the S21. And I definitely appreciate this user's comment because, yeah, just to go backwards, yeah, the battery life on this S22 is absolutely terrible. In terms of modern devices, yeah, I don't know if I have anything that's worse. I still use my Pixel 2, mind you, to use at the gym, and yeah, the battery life on that isn't amazing, but it's also what, 4 or so generations old, almost 5 generations old. So one, battery sizes back then were smaller, and two, just overall the amount of usage. I mean, the batteries degrade. So I think I'm getting fine battery life for a device that's that old and that has been used that much. Whereas with this S22, I purchased it brand new essentially. I mean, I got it on eBay, but it was still factory sealed. And for the amount of battery drain that just seems to happen anytime you pick up the phone, it's unacceptable. And the reason, of course, is that it does have a smaller battery. It has 3,700 milliamp hours, which I don't know why they made that design decision. The S22 Plus has 4,500 milliamp hours, which if that battery were in this phone would be absolutely amazing. But it's in a bigger phone with a bigger screen, and the battery life on that one was fine. I did own one of those for a little while too. But for the most part, yeah, I agree 100%. The battery life on this phone just isn't good. Now, the next portion, going backwards again, is talking about it's the S21 will have well, I assume he's saying the S21 will have slightly worse battery life in comparison to the Zenfone 9, which, looking at the S21's battery, we have 4,000 milliamp hours. So yeah, it is a smaller battery. So yeah, I guess I'd have to agree with that. But of course, battery consumption is really all about usage. Now, of course, if the battery is just flat out small, like it is in this S22, almost everybody's going to get terrible battery life. It's, definitely, there are definitely things you can do in there to turn off various features. Like if I'm not using Wi-Fi, turn it off, turn off Bluetooth, turn off NFC. You might even dim the screen sometimes, turn off Wi-Fi scanning, Bluetooth scanning, turn off automatic app, like background app refresh, turn off automatic syncing. So there are a lot of things you can do to try to preserve battery life, but then it gets to the point where you're compromising the overall use of the phone. And it's like, well, I paid this much money for the phone. Why am I having to make so many compromises? So yeah, getting the S21 definitely has a slightly larger battery, so you probably would get better battery life, of course, depending on what your actual usage is. Let's see, USB. So boom, yeah, they all have USB-C. Wireless charging. All right, so I don't think that's something I ever mentioned about the Zenfone, it not having wireless charging. Personally, I think it's an absolute waste of, not an invention, because yeah, it's nice to have created it. But for me, in terms of actually using it, I don't see a use case where it's more advantageous to use wireless charging than just plugging it in. The only time I can kind of think about maybe will be nice is when in a lot of these newer cars, they'll have a wireless charging pad where you can just place your phone down and you're driving. So hopefully you're not picking your phone up doing too much anyway. But even then, I mean, if it's not magnetic, which I don't want to say, oh, well, that's why MagSafe exists, because don't even want to talk about that. But I can imagine with the slightest bump or, a sharp turn or something, the phone could get dislodged from that perfect spot for wireless charge, for it to charge wirelessly. And then, you might have it sitting down there thinking that it's charging and it's not charging at all. So I don't use wireless charging even in the phones that have it, which I'm not even sure which ones of mine have it, because again, I have no wireless charging pads. I just rather plug it in. Now, if we have to talk about MagSafe with the iPhone, I do think that's a good implementation of it. And then of course, MagSafe specifically is Apple's protocol. But if we're just talking about wireless charging or a wireless charging puck that you can slap on the back of a device and it sticks magnetically, then yes, at least you can still now pick your phone up and use it while it's charging wirelessly. But then I ask, well, why not just plug it in if it's going to be still tethered to something anyway? So yeah, not a knock on people who use it. My roommate uses wireless charging all the time. She bought herself a little charging pad, and yeah, she put her phone there occasionally. But I mean, I know from watching her, sometimes, yeah, she'll pick it up, boom, now it's not charging. And then maybe she'll end up putting it down somewhere else that isn't even on the charger. So it's just like, well, if you just left it plugged in, then you could still use it, and it continues to charge while you're using it. And then almost no matter where you put it down, as long as, of course, as long as it remains plugged in, then yeah, it's going to continue charging. So yeah, for me, wireless charging just isn't worth it. And if I could, which the Zenfone doesn't have it, I believe, since it has a plastic back, but I don't know how much money as a consumer we could save if we purchased a device that did not have wireless charging. But if that were an option, I would always go with the option that says, oh, you can save $50 on this thing by not having wireless charging. And then if it's like, well, you can save $50 by not having wireless charging, but then now the back is plastic because we don't need the phone to have a glass back since there's no wireless charging, then I'd say that's an added bonus. Or maybe now we have even a bigger battery because we don't have to worry about putting the wireless charging coil on top. Not that it takes up that much space, but just the intricacies of adding anything to these devices just makes it seem like it's it's a lot of work. And if you can remove one of those components that for me is completely useless, then I'd be all for it. So wireless charging for you or for anybody else might be well worth it. For me, complete waste of time. And I think the one thing I didn't mention is that for the most part, wireless charging is slower than plugged in charging. So if you can get the added benefit of having the phone charge faster and the convenience, I'd say, of being able to continue using your phone while the phone continues to charge, also just not having to buy a wireless charger, then yeah, to me, yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's worth it for most people. But again, to each or her, each his own or each her own. So cool. Let's see. And the phone will, still talking about the S21, that phone will outlast the Zenfone 9. So in terms of security updates and Android system updates, yeah. I think Samsung is doing 4 years of each, 4 or 5 years of each. So if the S21 came out in 2021, then yeah, we should expect support through 2024 to 2026. I don't know exactly. Probably 2025. So I'd say most likely 2025. And the Zenfone, we're estimating maybe 2 Android updates, or 2 years of support. And it's all nebulous, which it just fundamentally isn't fair. Which I know I'm keeping the Zenfone, and I'll continue to talk about it some more. But if the Zenfone released with Android 12, but Android 13 was already out in the wild, even if only Pixel phones have it, and I think OnePlus just got it recently as well, it kind of seems like Android 13 should be like update 0, because it's like, well, you're just behind. You're not really giving the customer something new, especially since your phone came out after, well, specifically because your phone came out after that version of Android was released. So I feel like, yeah, Android 13 should be update 0, update 1 should be next year with Android 14, and then Android 15 the following year. But Android 13 is going to be number 1. But the whole point of me saying that competition is important is because it is. So with Apple and with Samsung, I mean, in this country, in the US, those are the 2 dominant players. And of course, Apple has their own way of doing stuff because they are perfectly fine. And I'm happy that they support their phones for so long. But of course, the reason they do that is they want to keep you locked into their ecosystem. But either way, if you just happen to have an iPhone and nothing else, then cool, yeah, that phone is going to receive support for a long time. Samsung finally has come around with providing updates for an extended period of time, and extended is very loosely used right there. But those two companies, and I don't know if this is a chicken and egg type situation where, okay, are they providing support for the devices longer because they see that more customers are using their devices, so they want to, be advantageous about it and say, okay, cool, well, we will support these devices longer because more customers are using them? Or was it well, we will support these devices longer in hopes that customers will continue to use them? I don't know. I mean, with Apple, yeah, of course, it's, hey, keep them in the ecosystem. With Samsung, I can imagine it's just trying to continue to gain market share. But with other companies that do a bunch of other things that aren't smartphone, and I know Samsung does a bunch of stuff too, they don't have ecosystems, so cool. And the way that they're going to make money is by selling you a new phone. So, I mean, I bought my Zenfone from somebody on eBay, so technically they didn't even make any money off of me. And with the exception of, and I can't even think of something right now, I don't know how Asus would make any money off of me. Download apps and any type of in-app purchases, Google is going to make some money. I could maybe buy some accessories from Asus and they'd make some money, but even then I'm probably going to buy a third party. So the best way that they're going to make money is to sell more phones, or to manufacture and then sell more phones. And the way that they're going to get you and me to buy these phones is to not support them for as long as they could. Am I in favor of that? Absolutely not. But do I understand it? Yes. Because if they start supporting phones for 5-6 years, that means their sales are going to plummet most likely. Now, the flip side is maybe customers see how long Asus is supporting phones and customers go out and start buying them brand new. But then also, and I know I'm rambling here because I don't know what the solution to the problem is, but yeah, if I see that a Zenfone 8 is out in the wild, but I know Asus is going to support it for the next 3 years, then yeah, why would I buy a new one? I'll just go buy a used one, save some money, and still get security updates and operating system upgrades. So yeah, I honestly don't know. I think Asus makes some tablets. They make, of course, other computer components, laptops, things like that. But in terms of just if we're talking smartphones, aside from them selling us another one, I don't know how that will make any money. so yeah, I get it. Yeah, you're right. S21 going to be around for the next couple of years. In fact, I was literally just reading an article, not a big update, but a few of the older Galaxies are receiving some firmware or software updates from Samsung because users were having issues with GPS. So it's nice to see that, oh, every once in a while, I guess if they still see that there are enough people using their older phones, they'll push something out. But yeah, it's not going to be the full Android upgrade and all the time that goes into making sure that the newer version of Android works with some of their older hardware. So yeah, I completely understand what this user is saying, but yeah, I don't know what the solution is. So hopefully, I mean, yeah, I'd like that Zenfone to get 3 or 4 years of support. That was going to happen, but yeah, so yeah, completely understand the S21 is going to be around for a while. So pricing, and this is an interesting one. So, yeah, I have not looked for an S21 brand new or used because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Samsung, even though I'm using this phone right here to record. But this user is saying that you could find S21s for $300 or $400. Now, I will say this right here. So I bought this phone right here, brand new, from somebody on eBay, but it was still sealed for $400. I think it might have been like 401.96 or something, some random number. But yeah, essentially $400. So it wouldn't surprise me if I could find an S21 for older. And I will say for a little while, in fact, it's still up there, I've had this S22 on eBay myself trying to resell it. And yeah, nobody's buying it. Mainly because through carriers, you can almost get these phones for free, if not for free. So when it comes to pricing, yeah, the Zenfone, that's the most I've ever spent on a phone. I really like it, and then I'll probably sell it at some point in time and get some of that money back. But with Samsung devices, I feel like carriers are just trying to toss them and hope that somebody catches them because, yeah, they're giving them away for free almost. So if you're into Samsung stuff, yeah, I would say, yeah, don't buy one at MSRP. If you're a postpaid customer and you're, knowing that you're going to stick with the company for a while, then yeah, you might as well buy, the phone through them and get whatever type of carrier incentives, whether they're like, I think monthly bill credits or whatever. Yeah, get a new phone from them and end up not having to pay anything. So yeah, pricing, I don't know if it's really a big factor in terms of just talking about Samsung products. But yeah, if you're looking at, or if you're okay spending more money for a phone that is not going to be, whether it's subsidized or, yeah, we'll just call it that, then yeah, the Zenfone probably would be something to consider. But the last thing, and I went backwards on purpose because the last thing I want to mention, which I think is the overarching point of why I particularly like the Zenfone, is its screen size. So the Zenfone is 5.9 inches. The S22 is 6.1 inches, and the S21 is actually bigger at 6.2 inches. So if that small form factor is what you're looking for, which is exactly what I was looking for, the S21 was not an option. And I briefly had an S21 FE, which I could have taken the time to see the specs of that specifically. But it was, I remember I'd be watching my movies on my phone, and I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable to hold. So for me personally, the S21 was not an option, regardless of price, because again, I got this S22 at a good price, but the S21 was bigger than the S22, which sometimes I felt the S22 already was a little larger than what I wanted specifically. So the Zenfone, yes, is more expensive, unfortunately. It's probably not going to get software or security updates for as long as any of the Samsung devices. Does not have wireless charging. But the overall user experience that I've had so far has been exceptionally good. And I thoroughly enjoy the close to stock Android that you get when you get a Zenfone compared to One UI that is what Samsung has decided to do with their devices. So yeah, I definitely appreciate the comment. I'll post this in a little bit and I'll probably, type back to that particular user. But yeah, for me, it was, this phone is smaller. Yes, I know it's a little more expensive, but I think I'm going to enjoy this device for what it is, as opposed to just getting one of these cranked out mass market consumption devices that I feel Samsung does. Is they want to appeal to everybody. So yeah, the phone can do freaking everything. Like, as I said, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's plugged up using a USB-C cable to an HDMI cable, and now I'm using this computer monitor as a monitor for the camera that's on this device. In addition to that, because I plugged it in, yeah, now freaking Dex has popped up or whatever, so I'm able to control the operating system on the phone with a mouse. And then, you know, if I need to type something on the screen, I can either have an on-screen keyboard, which, interesting, it doesn't work too well when I'm clicking on the screen, but I can use, I can make an on-display keyboard pop up when I'm using the actual phone itself, which obviously it's not facing towards me right now, so I couldn't use it. But yeah, Samsung, the phone is fine. The S22's battery is too small, but the S21 screen is too big. The Zenfone is smaller screen, but bigger battery than them both. But yeah, unfortunately, we aren't going to get the support that the phone deserves.